This video is called Fan Anazaha wa-tahtib. From what I gather, tahtib means the use of stick or stick, and the name was shortened to tahtib. They removed the art of being straight and honest through, and just left the use of the stick. Now think about this. Why would they remove the art of being straight and honest? Kind of gives away that they're not being honest, that they deal with illusion. When we look back at Ka and Hor Aha and Scorpion 1 and Scorpion 2, it is clear that there is a martial arts disagreement taking place. These are martial arts societies, first and foremost, which happen to include a degree of science and reproduction, as well as other applications of politics and the state. Okay. Studying human nature, studying nature, etc. The word scorpion, scare, peon, terrorism, is their angle, not mine. And score, peon, the ref being fair backwards, and we'll get into that later. In this video, I'll go through the various stages of this idea and how the cultural continuity went through Igbo and why. It has everything to do with the Bantu people, the people whose perspective they want to ban, ironically. This has everything to do with cultural memory, right? Being honest about your memory and the order, the martial to order, through the use of the stick, and we'll explore why the stick later. The real problem in our society is that education wants to brainwash you and to get you to remember their left-right paradigm, their cultural values, their system, their way of doing things, their beast, their Babylonian beast. And we'll get into the connection with the Jews, the Babylonians, and the Asians later. Of course, this leads to the sweep of the Middle East. The real problem with the system is that it doesn't allow for cultural memory, for people to truly find themselves, and to pursue a path that is consistent with the truest wishes of God and their ancestors. And it doesn't allow for them to truly find themselves in Africa to complete their cultural perspective. So this next picture is about the repression of capoeira until the 1940s. We see this continuity of repression, suppression, right? Keep this African martial arts system from being pervasive. Did they succeed? Of course they did. Of course, capoeira in its pure form is gone. And what is left is the dance, which in the next video, I'll connect the dance to the music, to the movies, to the media, to the illusion, martial arts, presentation, martial arts, demonstration, demos, peasant, right? Peasant, demonstration, presentation, okay? And how that has to do with transform, right? The trance to transform, the trance to transcend. So this is the suppression of martial arts leading toward the illusion, the demonstration, the demon crazy, democracy, and so on. And we'll get into that later, whether that's good or bad. This next picture is about the Kunini stick fighting culture of capoeira. Where is the emphasis on the application? The stick fighting, which traces its roots to ancient times in Africa, especially, but not limited to, Egypt. Where is this emphasis in the capoeira system? Where are the African martial arts institutes in general? We see scientists in secret societies quite often teaching the capoeira, and of course the book Fighting for Honor, the history of African martial art traditions in the Atlantic world, which I am citing from in many of these pages, tells us about the closed societies that dominated the slave culture that never left us. We still have the Boulets and the Masons and the voodoo societies and the other Satanist societies as well. So this leads us to the leopard. Remember, the leopard is the surgeon in Kunini culture. I've gone over this. This is also in the book, but I'm not going to put too much of the book out there. Okay. The leopard's lethal grace for authority. Of course, there's wordplay. Leopard. Okay. Draw. Pay. L. Draw on the leopard form of martial arts. The true form. The Ra form. To reform to Ra form. To let all. Right. Lay L. Late L. Okay. So what does this mean? Lethal. Lethal to who? Who, what, where, when, why, how, why? If you let all have their way instead of going the true way, then it is lethal to the spirit. If you lay L in terms of the Canaanite deity in the Canaanite custom, tradition, and form, then it is lethal to the spirit, to the soul. Late L, right? If you're late, you become Set, the storm god, the Canaanite deity El, and so on. Which leads us to the next, that has to do with the race, right? God race, not race in terms of the flesh. Which leads us to witchcraft, magic, soul, and order, the Ibibio, a tribe very close to the Igbos as far as region and proximity. Okay, certainly they had a disagreement, but certainly we see witchcraft also being done by the Igbos, and this is part of why there was a slave trade. The Igbos are very much they're very clever, insightful people. They're said to be the most intelligent of the Africans, and we see a lot of jealousy, and a lot of, just underhanded, nonsensical arguments as people try to argue as to why that isn't the case. Witchcraft in terms of psychology, chemistry, and so on, and of course, we see the connection with medicine and martial arts, military medicine, military sciences of old, if you will. And that leads to them using illusion to try to confound the martial arts order. Okay, by now you should see it my way definitively. If not, you are delusional. Make no mistake. I suggest you look more into these things until you get it. So we go to El Amrah near Aptu, which is also Abydos, Osiris's cult center, his funerary center, I believe. Okay, so we saw evidence of the Scorpion King. He worships men, and remember that goes back to mining and Mycenaean, okay, Minos, Crete, okay, where the mining was done, the Minotaur, okay, the labyrinth, right, psychology, drugs, okay, his cult center was chemists, men, chemistry, okay, and Set, brute force, chemistry and brute force instead of cultural memory going back to Horus as the hero, Haru, a hero. He had the same twin plumes on his head as Amen. Okay, and this goes back to how Shu found the nerve to come out of hiding, right? Drugs and brute force and so on, and psychology. This leads us to the symbol of victory and sex, right? The V, pointing down to the earth. Okay, so we get to the Bantu migration. They replaced the hunter-gatherers 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, well before Shaka Zulu rose to prominence in South Africa. We see the martial artists ordering society. Why were they hunter-gatherers and not farmers? Certainly farming goes back to the Egyptian times, the Old Kingdom times at least, and when we look at Biafra. So why were these guys so late to come into the farming techniques? Because these Africans weren't the Egyptian wise men of old. It was the West African Bantus who replaced the hunter-gatherers in South Africa, and then we see a solid leopard connection, going back to the leopard, the cat, the Ka of Heliopolis, right? It's one thing to be just another cat. It's the flesh. It's the science behind it. It's the Ka, is the spirit behind it. Okay, the Bantu migration. So we see the definitive proof. Think about how, again, the snow makes people thicker, short and stockier. Okay, and this is kind of like conducive to the Neanderthal body type. And how the heat makes people look, and how far away the Asians were, etc. Okay, there's a difference between the Asians and the Asiatics. This takes us to Greece, right? That civilized the West. Basically, the African martial artists civilized and united Egypt. And these were black African guys from southern Egypt, Neccan. Certainly they had connections with where the leopard comes from in the first place, sub-Saharan Africa. And they marched north. These were not Asiatics who later on invade from the north. okay, including the Hyksos, who were probably some Asiatic kind of people. One way or another, they're related to Asians, and they brought in, they favored Set, and this is where Amen picked up the ideas of being part of Seti. Okay, so we've made the Greece-Egypt connection, and now when we look at what goes on is we see an abundance of evidence all over the news all the time. People don't have the focus to kind of disseminate this information, and they rely on misdirection of people and the willingness of educated people to play stupid. And, you know, of course, there's no shortage of ethnocentrics and people with liberal agendas and different various agendas, gay, feminists, that are willing to lie for their cause and to get respect from their respective communities in the process. Okay. So when we look at succession and successful, right, it has to do with submission, right? Part of the mission is to submit to the order of God, right? The orders, God's orders. So moving on, when we see the spirit refines the tall person in sparring, okay, while the spirit of the smaller person is to dart in like a snake, okay? This forces the difference between a dart, right, and an arrow. Erah, haru, Erah, right? The H is the fence, is to come from long distance. This has to do with range and the mountain range. Okay, we see that basically my grandfather was serving his master in heaven, and you know, the people that follow Ari, you know, in their cult center, when he married my grandmother, who perhaps is more likely to be the direct descendant of Narmer. Okay. So we look at lightsaber, right? And the wordplay there, we'll go through some wordplay and wrap it up. Lay, see, bore, right? Depending on who you lay is how you see the boar, right? If you lay someone like me, you understand what it means to have higher morality and so on. So if you don't think fast, which is what I've been arguing forever, you're going to be late and you're going to sow the boar, which is a play on words for the bear as well. And that includes right here in California with the California bear. And of course, there's the polar bear and other connections we can make there as well. So when we look at the fan eyes, right? Finish. The fan eyes. There's wordplay there. Remember vow to L, interchangeable words, gospel, go spell, and so on. The lexicon, the etymology, the morphology, linguistics, phonetics, and so on. All right. Redemption has interesting wordplay. This is key. Red up shun. Ra dam peon. Remember demos, peon, peasant. Ra dim peon. Rod up shun, also demonstration, democracy, demon. Okay. No I paid or, right? Backwards, right? Reed, remember the reed people, the fishermen. Red and reed, option. No up add or, rod empty on or red empty on. Rudy peon, Rudy peon. Ra day peon. Triangle. It has to do with coordination and coordinates of the triangle, right? The right angle triangle has to do with a certain martial art combination with a stick and otherwise to kind of see where the person's head at and their ability to coordinate and move effectively, which is a form of intelligence, which has to do with senses, which even the Satanists acknowledge as a valid way to understand the spirit. So this is a commonality. And eventually we see that Set's temple resorts to psychology and drugs and cheating and sabotaging bloodlines and rape and brute force and so on. You know, and that also goes back to repair, right? Repair versus rape or, you know, rape or repair, right? Rape or repair. Okay, ahead. It comes to ahead. A, head, the head of the A. Ref, rough, fair, foe or fear, raw or horse and set.